Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, July 20th, 2025, and this is show number 1054. Well, you're going to hear a lot about MacStock this week, but I wanted to tell you that I got the pleasure of being on For Mac Eyes Only. This is a podcast hosted by Mike Potter, and the other guests were Dave Ginsberg, Brian Flanagan-Arthurs, and the simply dreadful Chuck Joyner of Mac Voices. We talked a lot about the show, and I don't want to spoil any of it, but of course, there's a link in the show notes. Well, a few months ago, I created a ScreenCastsOnline tutorial about 3 applications from the incredibly prolific developer Sindra Sorhus. In that tutorial, I taught how to use Dado, Ico, and Velia. Well, I'm back with 4 more small but really powerful apps from Sindre, again as a ScreenCastsOnline tutorial. We've got Plain Text Editor, which runs on the Mac, iPad, and iPhone, and it gives you a place to get your thoughts down without being distracted by things like formatting. Online Check is a quiet little menu bar app that simply tells you when your Mac has gone offline and when it goes back online. I keep this running all the time on all of my Macs. I love this application. Now, I told you before about Dado. It's a very capable menu bar app. It's kind of a companion to your calendar, and it's really capable, but it might be more than you need. No worries, Sindra Sorhas has another one in this tutorial I cover called Today, and it only shows you today's events. The final one is called AnyText, and it lets you create text widgets on your lock screen or home screen of your Mac, iPad, and iPhone. ScreenCastsOnline is a subscription service, but you can get a free 7-day trial and watch all of the current back catalog. Beware of the free trial, though. The tutorials on ScreenCastsOnline are fantastic. Not just mine. Of course, mine are amazing. But all of the tutors are really, really good, and you're going to want to become a member if you check out the free trial. Well, I probably shouldn't have used my happy, upbeat kids musical intro jingle there, because I should have had something maybe a little more ominous sounding, because I want to make a public service announcement. Some of this you've heard about, but I wanted this to be a standalone article for people to share with their friends and family. A few weeks ago, I told you about how I tripped on a walk with my dog Kepler. There was a concrete cover for the water meter that had sunk more than an inch below the sidewalk. When I tripped over it, I flipped nose first onto the concrete. I had no time to even get my hands up to help break the fall. When I fell, my Apple Watch noted that it looked like I'd taken a hard fall, and it offered to call emergency services. Even in my state of shock, I knew the right answer to this question, and I immediately pushed the red circular SOS button. But nothing happened. So I pushed it again, and again, and again, and nothing happened. Well, here's the PSA. It's a slider, not a button. Get this? It's a slider. It's a round red button. It's a slider. Now, if you look closely at the screenshot I put in the show notes, you'll see that the round red SOS button is sitting inside a rounded rectangle that says emergency call. Evidently, Apple thinks that it's obvious that the emergency call part of the rounded rectangle is a slot that you're supposed to slide the SOS button across. I can tell you that in all the time I've been looking at this button over the years, since it was implemented in the Apple Watch, I never noticed the slot, and I always thought it was a button. Now, perhaps you're more observant than I am, and would be more observant with the blood gushing out of your nose than I was, but it never occurred to me that it was a slider. I was also under the impression that if you didn't dismiss this alert, the Apple Watch would automatically call emergency services. I've always immediately swiped up and said, no, I'm fine. While bleeding on the sidewalk, I did not take the time to read the Apple support documentation that I've linked to in the show notes, where they explain that the only time emergency services will be contacted automatically is if you do not move for 1 minute. Now, it would be good news to me if everyone who hears this PSA from me thinks to themselves, I always thought it was a slider. Why are you so unobservant? But if there's just one of you out there who thought it was a button too, then it was worth me writing this public service announcement and telling it to you on the podcast. As you know, every year, Steve and I make the pilgrimage to the Chicago area to attend MacStock. And every year, I struggle with how to describe it to you because I gotta talk about it. But if I gush too much and I talk too long about it, it'll be like your Aunt Edna showing you photos of her trip to Niagara Falls on her slide projector. Nobody wants that. And yet, it's such an extraordinary experience that I really need to share it with you. Now, the structure of the show is pretty simple, but it's evolved over the years. This year, we had 45-minute talks and 90-minute workshops all in one single track. So you never have that FOMO of like, oh, I should have gone to the other one. The amazing Mike Potter runs the show, And he's very careful to put long breaks between sessions because, as we all know, the hallway track is where most of the knowledge transfer actually happens. The delightful Brian Henson is the MC of the show, and he's brilliant at keeping the speakers and attendees on track. I was very impressed. Every single talk for 3 days started on time. MacStock is also the most inclusive conference I've ever been to, and as a tech conference, it's remarkable that around 30% of the attendees are women. Every year, I ask all the women to stand up, and everybody goes bananas because it's so extraordinary. Unfortunately, the picture I got was real wide, and everybody looked real small, and you can't really tell. It was a terrible photo, so I didn't put that in the show notes. But trust me, 30% were women. Now, one of the best parts about MacStock for me is how well represented the NoCilla castaways are at the show. We take a family portrait every year, and this year's photo has 26 people in it, and that wasn't even all of us. There are a few people missing. I put the photo in the show notes along with a key Steve and I created, so you're going to know who's who. It was Marty Gensius's idea to create this key photo. It's an outline of each person with numbers on them, along with a table of all of the names. Not only did we represent as attendees, but we rocked the stage too. Amongst the awesome speaker list, we had Kirshen Sia, who's followed the show for ages, the delightful Jill from the North Woods, Marty Gensius, also known as Drunk Nick Nolte in the live chat room, and Chris Cook, who you've only recently met on the NoCillicast. I think one of the most touching thing was that people showed up in their NoCillicast 20-year anniversary shirts. Doc Tim had his on, and so did Charles Goucher. And to my absolute delight, Dave Hamilton of the Mac Geek Gab showed up in his. Bruce from Alabama showed up in the hoodie, which I didn't even have yet, and he kept going on and on and on about how soft it was. Now, I didn't get a photo of Steve wearing his 20th anniversary shirt, but he definitely had it on for the last day. I wore different colored versions of the anniversary shirt each day because Chuck Joyner gave me a hard time a few years ago for not branding myself at trade events. I'd like to go through a few highlights of things I learned at MacStock. Jill from the North Woods did a fantastic job talking about how to get fit and healthy with Apple devices and tools. Out of the blue, she dropped in a life-changing tip. Apple Fitness Plus has a big focus on music, which is great for people who care about music. Now, I'm absolutely not against music while working out, and in fact, I kind of like it, but it's not the focus for me. During some workouts, I've noticed that sometimes it's hard to hear the trainer over the music. Jill's tip is that Apple Fitness Plus has a toggle where you can choose whether to emphasize the trainer's voice or the music. On the Apple TV, when you pause or just have the timeline visible, just above it over on the right, you'll see 4 icons. The fourth one is a circle with a waveform in it, and when selected, it pops up a menu. At the top, it says Audio Focus, and you can toggle it between trainer and music. Maybe you prefer the music at a higher volume, and we can both be happy. I also discovered that it's in this menu that you can turn on audio hints. If you're blind or low vision, it's handy to have the audio hints telling you what the trainer is doing. You can now set how fast audio hints play from 0.8x to 2x. In this way, you can control how much it talks over the trainer. Now, on the iPad, it's slightly different. There are 3 icons in the bottom right. The third one is a 3-dot menu, and it pops up to show you audio hints and audio focus, both of which fly out separate menus. In there, you can see trainers versus music, the option that Jill taught us about. I have no idea why it's not the same on the Apple TV and on the iPad, but it is different. Even worse, oddly, Apple Fitness Plus on iPhone doesn't have the controls for audio focus or audio hints that either Jill or I could find. Now, Jill had another idea that really resonated with me. When she was talking about her health journey, she shared an excellent strategy. She will only let herself listen to the best audiobooks when she's exercising. Isn't that a great idea? That way, exercising becomes a treat, and working out is something she can look forward to. Jeff Gamet did a great talk on security and privacy, starting with the basics of HTTPS and DNS. As he added layers of knowledge, he eventually made it all the way to explaining DNS over HTTPS, which is called DOH. Bart has explained this to us in Security Bits, but it sure didn't hurt to have it cemented in my brain to hear it more than once. Jeff also talked about something else in his talk that I've asked Bart to help us do a deep dive on in Security Bits, hopefully next week. So Jeff really tickled my brain on both of those. But the main takeaway I got from Jeff was an analogy that made me laugh while making complete sense. He says that privacy is like his underpants drawer. There's nothing secret in there, but you know what? It's nobody's business but his to look in there. Now, the only problem with this analogy is that I'll be thinking about Jeff's underpants every time someone is trying to explain why privacy is important. You can thank me later for planting that image in your mind as well. Mike Schmitz talked about AI and large language models, and he had some real interesting insights on this. He encouraged us to maybe not use LLMs just to get our work done faster, but rather use them to help us be more creative. He walked us through the various LLMs, and he talked about which ones help you to be more creative in which areas, or at least the way he does it. The one that really surprised me was when he talked about how he uses Grok. Now, I only know that it's been trained to be a Nazi, up to and including talking about how awesome Hitler was and how he would fix the problems of today. But Mike said he'd found a good use for it. He said he uses it to argue with him. By that, he meant that he uses it to play devil's advocate to help him challenge his own thinking. I'm fascinated that someone would think of this idea in the first place. I'm noodling on what kind of arguments I'd like to have with Grok and whether I'm willing to take the risk of it turning nasty, but it did tickle my brain to think about a different way to use these LLMs. Kirsten Sia did a very good talk on passkeys. After walking through all of the reasons why passwords are a hot mess, she went step by step through explaining public key cryptography and how it's used to authenticate you for passkeys. Now, Bart has explained public key cryptography to us many times, and I mostly get it, but a different penny dropped during Kirsten's explanation. Public key that's hard to say. Public key cryptography, when it's used to encrypt information to be passed over the internet, that requires both ends to have public-private keys encrypting the file in both directions. I had it in my head that this always had to be done both directions. But with passkeys, Kirsten explained that public key cryptography is only used for authentication, so it's a one-sided problem. You give the public key to the website, and then you encrypt your authentication with your private key. If that public key can decrypt the authentication, then the website knows you are who you say you are. I hope I didn't make a dog's dinner of that, but it felt like a real revelation to me that that was different than regular public key cryptography for encrypting bidirectional information. Now, I also really like Kirsten's talk because she gave a specific shout out on one of her slides to Bart's explanation of FIDO passkeys and why they rock from Chit Chat Across the Pond number 728. Now, I'm a big old screenshot fanatic, as you've probably noticed, so I didn't necessarily expect Dave Ginsberg to be able to teach me anything on the topic. And this is why it's so important to go to talks even if you think you know everything. He talked about TechSmith's Snagit app, which I used probably 15 years ago on Windows when I was still working. It wasn't much to write home about back then, but as Dave showed us the interface, I discovered the modern version has a lot of really nifty features. Now, the thing that really woke me up, though, was when he showed that they have a brand new feature called Snagit Steps, and it looks like it could be a contender to replace my beloved ScreenSteps. For many years, I advertised for ScreenSteps, and it was such an easy sell because I was constantly writing tutorials for the podcast using this tool. I was heartbroken when Blue Mango Solutions decided to discontinue it for personal use and focus on their business product. Now, I haven't tested Snagit Steps yet, but I sure plan to. As I expected, Chris Cook rocked the house with her talk on accessibility. She played the video that she and I created that demonstrated how she could control my screen with Remote Incident Manager from Numa Solutions. She also talked about a cool tool Numa Solutions have called Scribe, and it does what they call document remediation. I'd heard this phrase before on the Double Tap podcast, but I had no idea what document remediation meant. Imagine you're blind and there's a handout for a meeting that everyone gets ahead of time. Or say there's a document being shared during the meeting. What if you could have it made accessible real time during the meeting? How life-changing would that be? That's what Scribe can do. In addition to enjoying her presentation, I have to say I was delighted at how much fun Chris had at MacStock and how she was welcomed into the community. She's already planning on coming back next year. Brett Terpstra gave a talk on Mastodon, and he started with the problem to be solved, explaining the cesspool that is the anger algorithm of other social media platforms. After making a compelling case to move away from other tools like Twitter and Facebook, he explained that Mastodon has no algorithm. Then he detailed how federation works between server instances and how to choose an instant for Mastodon. It's not actually hard, but it can be confusing because it's not like any other social media platform. I learned a couple more tips on how to get more traction posting on Mastodon. I knew that having a good bio on your profile helps, but Brett gave even more suggestions. On your profile page, Mastodon lets you put links to things you do, and in there you can explain what you care about, what you talk about, and you can even add hashtags of what you're interested in. He also said that having a pinned post on your profile was powerful in letting people know why they should follow you. He also said that the thing that gets him to follow people is often simply that they interact with him in a positive and constructive manner. Mike Burke was a brand new speaker at MacStock, and he took a big swing. In his 90-minute workshop, he had us work on the preparation of starting a new project. He used the term mise en place, which is a French phrase that means getting all of your ingredients ready before you start cooking. His idea is to do mise en place for his digital workplace. First, he had us come up with a project idea to do in the workshop. Then, we were to tell our neighbor our idea. I was sitting next to Doc Rock, and his idea was to plan a murder. So that was fun. Anyway, Mike decided not to use Doc Rock's example. Rather, he chose planning a trip to MacStock. Mike had us download and install 4 applications to follow along. We started with MindNode for mind mapping, where we brainstormed what we would need to do to prepare to go to MacStock. Then we copied the text from the mind map into drafts, which is the tool he uses to think about the work. So the first mind map is about brainstorming. Now we're thinking about what has to be done. He also had us install something called Task Paper Parser to format the information in drafts. Now in drafts, he created tasks with variable names that would have meaning when we get to the Keyboard Maestro part as the last step. He imported the to-do items from drafts into the app Things, and that's where he says you actually do the work. Now, he got to Keyboard Maestro, and it got super cool. This was my favorite part. His idea was that before you go on this trip, you need to create a folder structure for all of the information for MacStock. You need a folder for reservations, like your hotel, plane, and car. You need another folder where maybe you're going to take notes. And he also likes to have placeholder documents for taking notes during the sessions. He said to the audience that he wanted to create a shell script for Keyboard Maestro that would do all of this automatically with just a few prompts. So he started listening to and reading Taming the Terminal, another shout out for Bart. But then he apologized and he looked at me and he goes, well, it was really cool, and I really do plan on going back to Taming the Terminal, but for this demonstration, I just asked ChatGPT to help me write the shell script. It was very funny. I liked it. I do have to say this was a lot to do live during a 90-minute workshop, but if you made it this far, you could then download the Keyboard Maestro macro that he had written and run it and see that it created the folder structure he described with all of the placeholder files right on your desktop. It was very cool. I did raise my hand and say as loud as I could that we should always download and run Keyboard Maestro macros from strangers who give them to us to run shell scripts. That got a good laugh. Anyway, Mike's talk was way above some people's heads in the room, but it was delightful to me to be challenged. It tickled my brain on how I could use this technique of mise en place. If you'd like to learn what we learned, but at a much more leisurely pace, Mike documented it, including the Keyboard Maestro macro, at themikeburke.com. That's BURKE.com. Brian Flanagan-Arthurs did a talk entitled Automate, but Don't Take Shortcuts. He explained all of the reasons for automating things in your life. Time efficiency and improved accuracy are both well-known reasons, but he also talked about automating saving money by using an Apple Card and having the cash go right into an Apple savings account. He talked about automation helping with consistency, like using the medications reminder in Apple Health. He pointed out that you can reduce stress because you don't have to remember when and how to do things. He gave examples of how he sets focus modes on both location and time to make sure he's on task when he's at the school where he works. He even talked about saving energy with automation by putting his water cooler on a smart switch in HomeKit. You just gotta know the first thing I did was send him our vacation switch automation to go along with that. And Marty Gencius, who is a professor with at least one PhD, I think maybe 2, he brought his son Will along, who also has a PhD, but his is in chemistry. They do a podcast together called Gear Up and Go, which is a tech and travel podcast. Instead of a presentation, though, he and Will invited audience members to fill out a little Google Web form where we got to enter our favorite tech item for travel. People jumped on the form, so they were only able to take the first 15 ideas and let each person come up to the front where one by one they told the audience about their tech gadget or software. So it was like this barrage of really cool information coming from people all within the audience. Now on the stage, Will and Marty lined up a bunch of paper lunch bags with numbers on them. These were surprise gifts for the people who walked up. They got to just choose by number. Some of the surprise gifts were super cool and useful, like one person won a MagSafe battery pack. But there was a fair amount of variability in how cool these things were. My favorite was when Marina Eppelman won a banana. Anyway, I was thinking when she got that, I was like, man, a banana sounds pretty good right now, but she wouldn't let me have it. Anyway, after the show, since they had this handy web form, they created a web page with all of the ideas people gave out at the show. Of course, there's a link in the show notes. They also created a web page for the tech gifts that they gave away, which is also linked in the show notes. I wonder if there's a link to the banana. Anyway, I thought the whole thing was a great idea. It broke up the monotony of presentations, and it showed off how fun this father and son team is, which made me want to subscribe to their Gear Up and Go podcast. One of the great additions to this year's MacStock was sponsorship by the company Ecamm. They make a product you've probably seen used if you haven't used it yourself, which allows video content creators to create fancy scenes and transitions in their live videos. This isn't a new concept. You may have heard about the open source project called OBS, Mimo Live from Boinks, and others over the years. But Ecamm seemed to be making live broadcasting easier and better. Now, I wouldn't normally gush over a company at a conference, but the big joy came from Ecamm because Doc Rock, known in the Mac circles since his 2OW, the unofficial weblog days, he works for them, and he was at MacStock, like I mentioned about him planning the murder. Anyway, he's funny, he's kind, he's brilliant, and he was shouting out answers the whole time. He's a training coach evangelist for Ecamm, and he inspired a lot of people who were attending the show. All right, enough about everyone else's talks. Let's talk about mine. In a moment of silliness, I volunteered to do not one, but two talks at this year's MacStock. The first one was a 90-minute workshop, and the second one was a 45-minute, I'm going to call it an inspirational talk, along the lines of the theme of the show, Share. Let's start with the 90-minute workshop. People ask me quite often what photo editing tool they should buy for their Mac, and they always follow it quickly by saying, but I don't want anything super complicated. My answer is always to try using Apple Photos. This common question got me thinking why people don't realize how powerful this built-in application actually is. I think it's because Apple hides a lot of the depth of the app under these wee tiny little chevrons. In my workshop, I walked through every single one of those little drop-down menus and hopefully demystified them by demonstrating their effect on purpose-chosen photos. The good news is that Steve recorded the workshop using his fancy new Pocket 3 camera. The bad news is that we forgot to charge the fancy new microphone that goes along with it, so he had to record the house sound. The good news is that Final Cut Pro has a pretty impressive filter built into it that allows him to remove the room echo reasonably well. He posted the video to YouTube, and of course, there's a link in the show notes. Now, I was sad that my second talk was the very last talk of the entire conference. It was at 5 p.m. on Sunday night. That's the worst, right? Well, on the first day, we discovered that one of the speakers, Kelly Gamont, was unfortunately unable to attend. I raced over to Mike to say, hey, why don't you pull my talk forward to that first day to take her place? To my dismay, he said that my talk was the perfect way to end the show. It actually turns out I think he was right. People, for reasons I can't explain, maybe because it's a great conference, they stayed to the end. And that really surprised me. There were so many people. There's so many more. I thought it would be like 4 people. It turned out my talk was a great way to end the show. Throughout the 3 days, people said nearly everything I had prepared. But it turned out that was a good thing. I was able to sew all of their comments together into this cohesive story where I encouraged them to share what they learned, and I made suggestions on how they should share this knowledge. I was very proud of my slides because I created 35 of them, and there were 0 words on my charts. Okay, I'm lying. One chart had a ton of words on it, but it was to illustrate how too many words are a bad thing. I don't want to tell you too much more about the talk because Steve has created a video for this one too. The good news is we charged the mic this time, so the sound is even better. Now, I'm also including in the show notes a nice video of just my charts. If you watch this video, since it's all pictures, you'll have virtually no idea what I talked about because all of the details are in the speaker notes. I do have to spoil one part. One of my very last slides showed how people like to scribble on iPhone screenshots to point at something and how terrible that is. I showed instead how to make nice rectangles and arrows and such instead, and I begged the audience, no, I actually forbid the audience to ever send me a screenshot like that. I can't believe that I said that. I should have known not to do something like that because for the next half hour, I was barraged by screenshots with scribbles on them from attendees. It's good to have friends. Well, as much fun as the sessions were, the after-hours activities were great too. One night, Barry hosted a wine tasting, and another night we got to watch the Mac Geek Gab live. That was a real experience because for reasons nobody could explain, Pilot Pete came out in a toga exclaiming, I thought this was the Mac Greek Gab. Chuck Joyner did a live recording of his Mac voices, but he did not wear a toga. And Marty Gencius and friends hosted the Vision Profiles meetup where everyone could play with the Vision Pro. Now, for many of us, the best after-hours event was hosted by Kay Lee on Sunday night. Yes, the Kay Lee who was on the NosillaCast years ago and who surprised me last year by showing up out of the blue. She's moved to Japan, and yet she managed to get herself back to the States just for MacStock. That's how fun this is. You see, Kaylee has created a simulation of the old TV game show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And she wrote it all in JavaScript on a Mac. She divided us up into 6 teams, each of a different color. Get it? Get it? 6 colors? I didn't get that till the end. Anyway, she had us put one iPhone for each team onto an ad hoc network connected to her Mac. This instantly made the connected iPhone into the control surface for us to be able to choose our answers during the game, and it looked just like the buttons they have in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. The clues were all either Apple-centric or at least nerd-centric, which made it great fun for this audience. Now, the gameplay was just like on the TV shows, and if anything, Kaylee was an even more enthusiastic MC than Regis Philbin. I am not exaggerating when I say it was so exciting that several of us were literally biting our nails when we didn't know who was going to win. But the best part was when the game was over, Kaylee let us see her code. She walked us through a lot of it and kept apologizing for its crudeness while everyone exclaimed at her brilliance. When it was over, I suggested to Dave Hamilton and Adam Christensen that this was probably both of their favorite parts of the entire show, and they both enthusiastically said yes, they loved it. I have to say, I love MacStock with every fiber of my being. It's a very loving and inclusive environment. I don't think I've hugged as many people in the last year as I hugged over the weekend. If you don't like hugging, you don't have to hug anybody, but man, did we feel like hugging people. Mike Potter puts on an amazing conference with attention to all of the right details and gives us the space to nerd out, party together, and feel like we're home. By the way, there are links to the 2 videos produced of both of my talks in the blog post for MacStock 2025, but they're also directly linked in the show notes for this episode of the show in your podcatcher of choice. It just occurred to me, I wonder whether there's any young folks listening right now who have no idea what that sound was. Well, anyway, I have 2 people to thank for the generous donations this week, and I can tie them both back to MacStock. Last year, I had the great pleasure of meeting a lovely gentleman who we're going to call Mr. X to preserve his identity. He's a longtime listener, but he'd never reached out to me before. This year, he was unable to attend because of a scheduling conflict, but that did not stop him from going to podfeed.com/donate and buying me more coffees than anyone has ever bought me before. It was incredible. And the other support requires an explanation. Every year when we go to MacStock, the lovely Corky Heath picks Steve and me up at the airport, drives us to all of the offsite events, and then transports us back to the airport. When we thank him profusely, he says the same thing every year. He says that by doing this, he's saving us the cost of a rental car for 5 days, so that's his way of donating to support the shows. He also confesses that he enjoys having Steve and me all to himself so much of the time, but that joy goes both ways. So thank you to Mr. X and Corky for supporting the Podfeed podcasts. Well, it's that time of the week again. It's time for Security Bits with Bart Bouchatz. What's shaking today, Bart?
Well, I had a lovely cycle. Does that count as shaking?
It does. It does. You stayed on your bike. Nobody hit you. It's a good day.
They are both true facts, and that is definitely correct. I also stayed dry, which this week has been a rarity.
You know, I saw somebody talking on social media about how they moved to Ireland in January and it hasn't rained yet.
I wonder where they're hiding, because it ain't here.
I was like, I wouldn't have believed you if you said a whole day, but 6 months, 7 months, I don't know.
Unless their definition of rain is like a big thunderstorm or something.
Oh, yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
Anyway, shall we get stuck in?
We shall indeed. We are straight to action alerts. It has been Patch Tuesday. We have 137 fixes from Microsoft, which is an averagey sort of a number these days. 1 0 day, which is a low number these days. But a subtlety from the Nosilla castaways' point of view, the most important updates are in Office. Not in Windows, but in Office. And to any listeners who also work in the industry, your most important fix is also not in Windows. It's in SQL Server.
Hmm.
It's a little unusual. Usually it's, Windows that needs the big help. In this case, it's Office and SQL Server. The Office one is nasty because it's one of those just having the preview appear in the Windows File Explorer is enough to run the arbitrary code, which is a lot easier to do than to
Oh.
double click a dodgy file, right? Just have it preview at you. So definitely patch.
So there's a good question. How do you
Hmm.
patch Office? Doesn't it just pop up on its own?
Well, so
Is-
on the Mac, depending on which version you have, you may or may not have the Microsoft Updater app, which may or may not sort of ask you for permission depending on how you have it configured. Or if you have the App Store version, then it kind of depends on how your App Store is set up.
Hmm.
There's about
I'm
50 ways to
I'm
get
just
Office.
I'm just looking at Excel and there's no check for updates in it.
Then you have it in a way that it's not your problem. But it is very possible to install it in a way that it is your problem.
It's not it's not the App Store version. I think I downloaded it directly from Microsoft. So you would think it would be my problem. But
Yeah.
but you're right, the updater might be there, might exist.
Yes, there's an app
Microsoft.
called Microsoft Updater, which may or may not exist on your Mac, and that may or may not do it automatically.
Yeah, no, that doesn't exist here either. None of the above. Hmm. And I have
The recent versions from Office 365 update themselves on start, so they do that Google Chrome
oh,
thing where every time you
that's
fire
what I
them
was
up,
hoping. I pick that.
you pick that. Yeah, that is definitely easier. That is definitely easier. Yes. Um, Also, while you're turning things off and turning things on again, do that to Google Chrome again. There is another 0 day. It seems like only 2 weeks ago we had this conversation because you commented how easy it was to patch Chrome. Just turn it off and turn it on
Yeah.
again. Well, do that again because there is a new 0 day actively exploited and it is a sandbox escape. So normally
Ooh.
JavaScript can't touch anything really on your computer like your files. That's because of the sandbox. So if JavaScript can escape
Right.
the sandbox, then a dodgy web page can mess with your actual files. You don't want that. So patch.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, I just opened it and closed it again. Didn't see it do anything, but I don't think it does
Well,
tell you, does it?
oh no, it's very silent about it, but it's
Cool.
enough. Because what it's actually done is it's got the update ready in the background without telling you. And then
Oh,
the first time you close it, it goes, oh great, now I can do my thing. And then you're back up.
that's
Yeah, so
genius. That's
it is.
genius.
It's
Everything should be
absolutely
that way.
agreed. Now, this last story is only for some Nacilla castaways, and I hope a small number of Nacilla castaways, because it is not a good news story. And I gave very serious consideration to not talking about it because it doesn't quite meet the Allison definition. But when I dug a little deeper, it's like, well, how bad is it really? It's like, oh, sugar, it kind of is bad. I need to talk about this. So, one of the things you really don't want is for a piece of malware running in your normal operating system to be able to not just mess with your operating system, which is already bad, but to be able to mess with the firmware of your motherboard, which is what's happening
Ooh.
here. Which means that it can install malware that happens before the operating system. So you can reinstall Windows or Linux 1,000 times and the malware will be back every time.
Oh. Oh,
They're
jeez.
horrible. So this comes down to a very popular brand of motherboard called Gigabyte. And now these flaws affect hundreds of their old motherboards that are out of support, which means Gigabyte is not even answering media queries, let alone patching this.
Oh, wow.
So if you are the kind of person who's really into gaming and likely to have a custom built computer, either because you got a local computer store to custom build you one or because you custom built it yourself, there's probably a 50-50 chance it's a Gigabyte board. You may want to dig a little
Really?
deeper. They're
It's that
very
likely?
popular. Yeah.
Oh, geez. So is the answer you swap out your motherboard?
Yeah.
That's the
Now,
only
these
thing,
are
right?
out of date. Yeah, so these are out of date boards. So maybe it's like the excuse you need to justify to your spouse to get a new motherboard. I don't know, but
There you go. To your financial director
yes, precisely.
or
So
CFO.
yeah, actually, I should start calling myself that when I do the family finances. This is your CFO
Oh,
calling, please.
100%.
Right. Okay. So that's enough of that. Popping into worthy warnings then. I had hoped I could tell you this story in one of those, ha ha ha, this is an example of how you do not do security. This is hilariously bad. This is the perfect counterexample. And then I realized that they leaked a lot of real data and we can't joke about it. So I'll stop burying the lead. McDonald's outsourced the first step of their hiring process to an AI bot. So if you applied for a job in McDonald's USA, now it's only McDonald's USA, so there are McDonald's franchises in many places. Those were not affected. It's the US franchises. And the first step in the application is that you would have a chat with a chatbot, which would not interview you so much as collect boring information from you. Effectively,
Okay.
we don't like you not filling in application forms properly. Why don't we try AI instead? Which means the darn thing was collecting lots and lots of data. And the password protecting all of that data, the admin password for this AI bot was 123456.
Seriously.
Seriously.
Oh,
Not only was the admin password insecure, but the IDs for each chat were not randomized but sequential. So you could literally have a valid login and just increment the ID by one and see another piece of data and another piece of data and another piece of data. You're never supposed to have sequential IDs. That
right.
was like 1980s whoopsies. So this is just a calamity of errors. And unfortunately, it's real Americans' data. 64
Mm.
million real Americans' data.
Mm.
So the biggest danger here is phishing, but convincing
Right.
phishing because they know where you used to work, they know where you live.
Yeah.
So it's a case of always be careful when you receive information you're not expecting, even if it knows something about you, because there's been so many data leaks now. You kind of have to assume the baddies know enough about you to try trick you. And so you definitely don't click on any link in any email, no matter how convincing and no matter how much they appear to know. Always start at the real website.
It's getting so much harder. I'm keeping my spidey sense active by the comments I get on podfeed.com because I
Right.
freely allow comments. And while Akismet blocks
A lot.
millions a year, um, now the bot ones are coming through, but I can tell by how well they quote the article.
Yeah.
Wow, Allison, it was great that Bart mentioned PKI this week in security bits. I
You
was
saw that
really
one
intrigued
too.
by that. Yeah, it's like nobody writes that way, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's too well written now is the biggest problem with it.
And it picked something at random that wasn't a too common a term, which unfortunately meant it picked a buzzword that is just implausible. I'm sorry, no one randomly comments about the wonderful PKI.
Right. Well, our audience might, but
Not in that tone.
no. No, it's you're wrong.
Yeah, exactly. That's or did you know? Or yeah, it's never. Oh, that was a fascinating insight. Full stop. End of post. Care to be
Yeah,
specific in any way?
yeah, those are all spam too. So that's the only reason I'm maybe I have an advantage is I'm practicing noticing
Fair.
the bot ones, but as everybody likes to say, this is the worst they're ever gonna be.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Again, I have ranked these stories so we go down towards happier news. So let us continue our journey. Um, One of the features Google has had for a while on their accounts is that you could tell Google that you're a special person who may be a lawyer or a CEO or a diplomat or whatever, someone who is more at risk than the average human being. And then they would increase the security on your account so that you would have absolutely no choice but to do multi-factor. I think they force hard, like token-based login. So Leo
Yeah.
Laporte tested
Right.
this. So it's a lot of hurdles, but that was in the cloud, which is already very valuable. But Google are taking that concept and projecting it down into Android. So that if you log into your Android device using a protected account, then Android itself begins to lock itself down much more like Apple
Oh,
do with their lockdown mode. But you're
okay. Oh, that's
bringing it
good.
down from the cloud, right? And they're not just doing it to the OS level because they also control the most popular browser in the world. So they're pushing those protections down into Chrome by if you are one of these protected people and you are logged into your device as that account, then Chrome on Android will be more locked down.
Okay.
This
That's
comes with
cool.
swings and roundabouts because it's going to turn off optimizations and a few other features.
Yeah.
But if you're the kind of person who needs this, you're the kind of person who needs this, and this is all
And
good.
you want this to exist, yeah. Speaking of Android, I think you skipped the article right before it, unless I fell into a
Oh,
coma for a few minutes.
yes, I
The
did.
tap track?
Sorry. Yeah, no, I did. Oh, yeah, we've done the big long story, but that was the other big long story. We have one more big long story.
Mhm.
Yes. So, one of the things people like about Android is how customizable it is and how every developer gets to do lots of cool things. And someone 20 years ago provided an API where an app can control how system dialog boxes animate. So you're in
Okay.
an app that needs your permission to enable the camera, say, and that's the operating system. So the app is now saying, "Dear operating system, ask the user to let me at the camera." And on iOS, at that point, the app loses all control. The system is now in charge. If you're granting permission, it's to the operating system. But Android being Android, we're like, oh, should we let the app control how this animates in so it blends right in? And
Hmm.
so someone went, I wonder what the lowest opacity is the API will support. 0.01% visible. In other words, completely transparent.
Okay.
So the thing that's
Which means when
actually
you're
frontmost
looking. Okay.
is the button to grant permission to full file access or all photos in your Photos app or all contacts in your Calendar app or Contacts app. And what the user sees, unless they're looking really bloody carefully, is whatever the app has put behind that system dialog.
So it could be they put the deny button behind the accept button, switching them?
Or just a click here for free whatever, or start game, or
Oh, just
anything.
e anything that gets you to click the button that says, "Give me full access."
Yeah, but
Oh,
you don't
that's
see it.
fascinating.
Yeah.
It's also
So
interesting that nobody found it for such a long time, that this has been there, right?
exactly, this has been in the APIs for years, and almost no one chooses to animate in the system dialogues differently because that's just too much customization. It's ridiculous. But it's still in the API because the API dates back to more innocent times. So Google have said they are going to fix this, but it's just very interesting how being
Yeah.
too open can undermine you in very unexpected ways.
I'm no genius, but it does seem like a particularly good idea that if the system is gonna be granting privileges, the system should be the only thing that you're interacting with during that time. I mean,
Yes.
just if you'd given me those, I don't know that I would have thought of it, but you gave me the 2 choices, I would have picked that, but, this has gotta be easy for them to fix. If there is a variable in there that says 0.01%, you can make that 0.99 or
Yeah.
point
The,
0.5 or.
Well, what you might do, what I imagine Google will probably do, is to not change the API so existing apps don't break in case one of them animates it to 50% or something, I don't know, and just ignore it. So the API still accepts the value and the OS ignores it and just renders the dialogue the default way. And that's sort of your best of both worlds. We haven't broken any apps. No one's going to get any error messages, and this problem just evaporates. So it's like a dummy
Right,
API.
right. Okay, it's still very clever, Very clever.
Very clever. You got to hand it to them. It's like, oh, that's thinking outside the box. Well done. Now, our crossover story from bad news to good news is a wonderful example. Neither of these two stories probably would have made it in on their own because they're not that important, but they tell a story I want to tell, which is that AI is neither the end of security or the answer to all security problems. It is on both sides of the ledger. So I have often said to you that with my work hat on, I get great value from modern AI tools to help me defend against cyber problems. But I'm equally aware that the baddies get a helping hand too, because they used to have to work really hard to write convincing English, and now that just comes for free. So phishing emails can be shockingly convincing, and they don't have any work. And the tools themselves are new. So a bit like the early days of home automation, when we used to call it the Wild West, well, now we're in the early days of AI. And for the stuff that's optional, the people self-selecting for it are going to be more likely to be more careful, and it's a smaller set.
Wait. I don't know what you mean. Wait, the stuff that's optional. What stuff?
Stuff you choose to install. So you decide.
What?
Okay. If you just randomly go about your life, you're not going to end up using OpenAI. You're going to sign up, or you're going to install their app, or you're going to do something.
Okay. You're not talking in any particular context, just you have to actively use AI in general.
In general, exactly. You're choosing to play in this new and exciting new playground.
Except if you go to Google, you get it whether you ask for it or not.
Bing, bing, bing. This worries me. This worries me a lot, because forcing AI on people in an attempt to make AI a success, whether or not it deserves to be, has a side effect. There is now really experimental technology wedged into tools with really valuable data like Gmail. Google have wedged Gemini into Gmail over people's objection. Turns out it's full of bugs. Dangerous ones.
To be fair, Microsoft has wedged Copilot into Microsoft Office.
And Meta have wedged their AI agent into their products. I'm afraid to say every big cloud provider has, to some extent, done so. And you can make the argument that, well, Apple do their AI differently, focusing more on device. If it's buggy, it's buggy. So you could argue that Apple Intelligence is also an example of AI being... There is a master toggle, but it's toggle to on.
Right.
Yeah. So, it's a thing. It makes me uncomfortable that it's a thing, but it is a thing.
I stopped you as you started to say, and it's full of bugs. What's full of bugs about Gemini?
So the baddies have discovered that the AI, when it writes email summaries, doesn't only read the stuff humans see. If you include some extra stuff in white text on a white background, the AI will quite happily interpret it. So you can write malicious emails which look fine to the human eye, but which will lie through their teeth in the summary. And if you click a quick action button, they can send you to fake web pages.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, exactly. Jesus. Another reason not to click on links in your email, right? If something is telling you there's a problem with your taxes, don't click on the link. If something's telling you there's a problem with your bank account, don't click on the link or the summary or go somewhere.
What if you used dark mode, if it would defeat that? Jeez.
Well, then the next thing is they'll try a 0.000001 font, right?
Yeah, there you go. And you keep wiping your screen trying to get rid of it.
What's this smudge here? Oh, it's half of the Declaration of Independence in one corner. Yeah, so like I said, there are two sides to AI, and it's kind of fascinating. So the good news story then, the other story that wouldn't probably have made the news by itself, is that Google also have a tool called Big Sleep. I don't understand why it's called Big Sleep, but it's an AI tool that does bug hunting. So it's not a chat bot, it's a bug hunting bot. And it found a critical vulnerability in SQLite, which powers almost every app on planet Earth. SQLite is one of those APIs that's in almost everything. So they found the bug with the AI, responsibly disclosed it, and therefore the patches were able to be out before we learned about the bug. That's AI.
Okay.
From Google.
That's great.
So, yeah. So Gemini, whoopsie daisies, and Big Sleep. Wow, that's cool. All in the 1 week.
That's good. So it found the same problem. That's really neat.
Yeah.
Or same kind of
Also,
problem. Yeah.
yeah. Also, in the good news column, iCloud passwords or Apple passwords have become a little bit more useful. If you're the kind of person who lives 80% in Apple land, but not 100%, it's helpful when Apple expand the plugins they support to more browsers. And now you can add Firefox on Windows to the list of things that will autofill your iCloud passwords.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
What did it work with before? Nothing, probably.
Chromium based.
Oh, Chromium base. Okay. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good. That's great. That's
It is
most of
great.
everybody
I think
then.
it's delightful. Yeah. Also, in the good news column, it has a very weird name that makes it sound like Microsoft are releasing legacy code. So I'll read you the headline and then you can get confused and then we'll straighten it out. Windows 11 now uses JScript 9 legacy engine for improved security. What? Why is it called legacy? Why are you adding something legacy and how does that make anything safer? Well, before now, the old Internet Explorer JavaScript library was still in Windows. Internet Explorer was dead, but the old JavaScript engine is still there to support a whole bunch of legacy apps that use the Windows HTML component for stuff. And that old Internet Explorer code is awful, but they need the API. So what
Okay.
Microsoft did was they took their newest JavaScript engine, JScript 9, and they made it talk the old legacy API. So it is legacy support for a modern engine.
Oh, okay. So bad title.
Bad title, because they called it legacy, but it's really modern. It's just a modern way of doing the backwards compatibility. So it actually
Oh,
is
that's
a
good.
real improvement. Yeah, I read the headline and I honestly had to read the story before I was like, what? How are Bleeping Computer
Why
telling
would
me
they
this
do
is a
that?
good thing? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that title is technically true, but
Yeah.
misleading.
Yeah.
Got you to
And
click it.
That's fair. Yeah. Although, to be honest, I read all the Bleeping Computer stuff because their security blog coverage is excellent. They had the perfect balance between technically factual and human. Because
Okay.
the Hacker News is all technical, no human. They never tell you the impact of things. They describe the bug in amazing detail. And they leave off the bit where how common is this software? How widely deployed is this software? What is the risk of exploitation? They leave all of the stuff out you might care about. And they just tell you how the
Yeah.
technical stuff works. But it's written by the same people as Bleeping Computer. So if I see one, I know the other one is happening within the next 6 hours. And
So you can
if
get the other dive.
exactly, so if I have my work hat on and I want more technical detail, I wait for the Hacker News. And if I have my Podfeet hat on and I get something from the Hacker News, I stick it in the show notes as a placeholder and I wait for the Bleeping Computer article and then I decide whether or not it's worth talking about with you.
That's cool.
Yeah. Right, and then our last story is a link to Tidbits, and I think it's one of Adam's posts. It usually is if it's worthy of me linking it. I should have checked that. But the people in Cloudflare have released a very interesting new thing that might just be the beginning of the end, or not even the end of the beginning, but the beginning of the end, whatever, of this business model that powers the web with privacy invading ads. And AI is kind of the reason that the old business model is doomed. AI bots don't see ads. AI bots don't click on ads. So a website can't sustain itself with ads as more and more and more people start to use tools like Perplexity instead of Google, because it's going to tell you what's on the web page. And it will let you see where it came from, and 1% of people who want to dive deeper will dive deeper. What do most people do when they get a search result from Perplexity? You go, okay, thanks very much. I now know that the oldest fossil of a Tyrannosaurus was found in wherever, right? They don't care.
Right.
It's like, I was having an argument with my darling beloved. I now have the answer. I'm moving on. And so the ads fall away, but the server bills keep coming. This is not good. And Cloudflare are the front end for half of the internet, if not slightly more. So they don't host web pages. They sit in front of web pages to protect from malware and from denial of service attacks and stuff. And they are offering a product that will detect an AI bot, stop it unless it makes a micropayment, and allow humans through. So if this takes off and AI bots become a source of legitimate revenue for website creators, then they don't have to rely on those privacy invading ads that are failing. They can make money off AI, and we can all use AI without thinking, oh my God, we're destroying the web pages we actually want to consume. So it's like a
You'd
wonderful
actually be helping
possible.
in some way?
Yeah. Using Perplexity would give money straight to Tidbits or whoever.
Right. Is this something they're just proposing or they're doing, or?
They have a product and they're trialing it. So they've gone further than fixing to make a plan, and they have a demonstration that actually works. And it's kind of cool because from the very earliest days of the internet, there was always the assumption that people would want money. So you're familiar with like HTTP 404 means page not found. Well, there's another error, 402, payment required. They have revived the old HTTP 402 header as part of this protocol for charging crawlers. I think it's great.
That's interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
So
there's a nice... Yeah, exactly. So there's a nice write-up on Tidbits sort of to put it into context and to sort of explain why this is interesting and a little bit more about how it works. So I will leave that as a link to go have a look. But I am very hopeful by this as a development. It seems very positive.
It does, yeah. Huh. Because this is one of those things where I never get super excited about things going in the toilet on the internet because the internet finds a way.
Right.
I mean, sometimes it's a bad way, but the internet finds a way, right?
Yeah, I sort of think of it, whenever someone predicts the end of the internet, I always add a few extra phrases in my mind, as it is now.
Right.
Something is going to force change and people are going to be cranky. That doesn't mean the internet's going away. It means something is going to change and people are going to be cranky. It's never the end of the internet. The internet finds a way. I like that. I'm going to steal that.
Okay, good. No credit required.
Yeah, still give it if I remember. I try to. I have one interesting insight to share with you. This made its way onto Security Now. It's a web page that uses the public API. So there's an API for Have I Been Pwned you have to pay for that lets you do fine-grained searches of your own organization. But there's also a free API that gives you some of the big picture information. And using the free API, someone has developed a really pretty JavaScript-based sort of visualization. So you get real-time graphs of the actual data in Have I Been Pwned. And when you hover your mouse over the different bar charts, you get a little bit more information. And it's the full real data. So as Have I Been Pwned updates, this will continue to show the most recent data. And it's all open source. So if you were wondering, well, how do you do that in JavaScript? Well, you can follow the GitHub link and see the code. Or you can just go to Have I Been Pwned.
2024 is a bad year.
Yeah.
2024 is a big spike in a lot of these. So it's got breaches per year, pwned accounts per year, mean pwned accounts per breach year. Something bad happened in 2008. That's got to be like the Verizon one. That
One
was
of those outliers, right? The first time we had 1 billion in the total or something.
Yeah, the 73 million accounts breached that year, and 2024 was 17 million. So yeah. Oh wow. Ooh, pwned accounts per data types per year is very colorful. It's stacked bar charts of all different
Yeah.
colors. I could spend days in here. This is cool.
Isn't it? Isn't it? Like both Leo and Steve just got lost for like half an hour of the show, just hovering their mouse over stuff. And I was like, okay, no, Alison is going to love this. So here we are. Interesting insights.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Let's do it again in just because it's cool.
Yeah.
Could have gone either way.
And you're right, actually. I could have put it in both ways. I don't know if you have a palate cleanser for a last minute inclusion, but I have
Don't
3 if you
think I
don't.
do. I don't think I do.
Okay, well then I'll give you 3, each in a different media, so you have different ways of enjoying. So I have a podcast episode to recommend. Bullseye with Jesse Thorne is one of those shows that I'm subscribed to, but I only listen to like 1 in 20 episodes. But it's I won't call it an interview show because it's a conversation. It's not like I will ask you a question and you will give me an answer and I will ask you the next question. It's much more natural than that. It's much more like 2 people having a coffee. And it's Jesse Thorne talking to George Takei. And it is the most honest interview I have ever heard with George Takei about what it's like to be closeted in, America 20, 30 years ago, what it's like when your government locks you up as an enemy alien, even though you're an American citizen. It is both wonderfully joyous at times and heartbreaking, but it's a fantastic conversation.
I will definitely listen to that.
Now,
He's certainly out there now.
He is, absolutely.
Posting
And I think
lovely, wonderful pictures of him and his husband, and it's great.
It's a joy to see. He has matured into a wonderful ambassador for our community. I'm extremely fond of George Takei.
Yeah.
Now, the next one is pure heartwarming. It's not quite Alison's cup of tea because it is music, but it is from the heart of Appalachia. It is American folk musicians who invited Chinese immigrants living in their small town in the middle of nowhere to a jam session. And they discovered that the banjo and a particular form of Chinese cello make amazing music. And they have basically released a free album. You can listen to it online for free, or you can pay them to download it on Bandcamp. It's amazing. It sounds so cool. And it's just this wonderful harmony. And at one point, the Americans sing in Chinese, in Mandarin Chinese, over a banjo tinky-tonky in a way, in that very American way, and some Chinese instruments. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
I would love this if it was a video, because then it would imprint on me. When it's only audio, that's where I have trouble getting the imprint and the joy. I might get it, but I would get it if I could see these 3 women singing this and playing. At least there's a photo that I can look at. Maybe I can concentrate on that while listening. But and from Appalachia, of all places.
I know. They were the feature story on last week's Happy Pod, which is a feature on the BBC World podcast. So they have a news podcast twice a day, every day, and it is 99.9% depressing these days. So every Saturday, they dedicate an entire show to nothing but good news. So 6 days a week, it's but the Saturday show is 100% good news. And they've started featuring one particular story who sort of half take over the show. And so they actually played the theme tune in a jam session, and that's how the show opens. And they're interviewed. It's fantastic. But the problem with the Global News podcast is they only keep 2 episodes in their feed. So it's a rolling,
right then?
Yeah, it's a rolling show. So basically every day the feed has the latest news, but they don't expect you to listen to back episodes. It's like a rolling snapshot of the news. But I wish the Happy Pod was permanent.
RSS isn't that big.
I know. It's I think they're trying to sort of say, do not feel you have to stay up to date on this podcast. I think they were afraid people would be overwhelmed by the frequency.
I guess.
Yeah. It's
Maybe.
interesting. Yeah. But as I say, they're on Bandcamp. And as soon as I finished listening to the interview, I went and found the album and I bought it. It's like, you're so many shades of getting my money. That's amazing.
So this is a little bit old, a couple of years ago, but the RSS feed for the NosillaCast that had that time had been going for 18 years is, it says 2 kilobytes. That can't be right.
No, it's got to be something slight.
Can anything be a kilobyte?
1,000 characters? That's implausible.
When I do a get info, it says 4 kilobytes. It's hard to believe. Don't
That's
listen to me. I don't buy it.
Yeah.
What's that?
That's
I don't think it can
implausible.
count that low, right?
Yeah, something not quite. There's an order of magnitude gone astray somewhere. More than one,
so.
I think.
But I'm sure it's hundreds at most, right?
Right.
Maybe on a crate, it might be a megabyte.
Yes. Now, one of the holidays we've invented in the middle of the summer is one of my favorites, World Emoji Day. It was World Emoji Day this week, and there's announcement of some new emoji, some of which look cool. I particularly like that the cartoon fight cloud is finally going to become an emoji. I can't believe that we haven't had a fight cloud. So you know the way in cartoons, when people fight, it's just a cloud of dust with random arms sticking out of it because they don't want to show violence.
Oh, maybe made famous from Peanuts? I picture a cloud of dust with hands and arms. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's called a fight cloud, right? It's how kids' cartoons handle violence. That's now an emoji. I think it's a cool idea.
Okay, that's hilarious. Jeremy Burge, I think, is he's the guy that runs Emojipedia, right? Maybe we can give him credit for it.
Well, I love Emojipedia. They're fantastic. But what the real pick here, though, is not Emoji Day or that new emoji. It's that there is science to back up the fact that using emoji makes your text-only messages better. Science proves emoji improve text messages. If you send someone a heartfelt I love you message and you add an actual love heart, it genuinely has a bigger emotional impact. Like not end of the world bigger, but measurably bigger.
That's cool. I would go along with that. I could believe it in text messages. I saw somebody's writing, I don't know what it was. Was it a slide? They must have had 7 emojis in every sentence. And I was just like, okay, I can't read it now. I can't even tell what you're trying to say.
Yeah, balance is an important factor in many forms of communication.
Do ye all things in moderation, as my mother loved to say.
Yes. So anyway,
I double checked
what I got.
It is Jeremy Burge, and I got to be been on Clockwise with him before, so I'm going to call him my friend Jeremy Burge.
Excellent. I end up on that webpage quite often because if you're trying to understand like the history of a weird emoji, like Apple have this, Steve Jobs has a weird history to the calendar emoji because the date of one of the Macworld conferences has basically determined the 17th of July, which is World Emoji Day, was a keynote date when iOS was demoed. And therefore, the calendar icon in every screenshot of iOS and all the press releases was the 17th of July. 17 JUL.
Oh, wow. It is. Yeah.
Yeah. That's Apple.
The one thing I would really like is to be able to tell what that emoji is on my phone. Because, I'm old, but I also have bionic eyes. I have incredibly good vision. And I look and I'm going, that could be a duck or a penguin. Well, I could probably tell a penguin apart because of the color, but, I sit there going, and I'm not always sure what it means. You know what I do sometimes? I turn on voiceover and it tells me what it means.
Oh, it gives the official name because the Unicode spec has like a 2-word name for every, or not necessarily 2 words, but a very, very short name like smiling face or very happy face or slightly sad face.
Right. Sometimes the difference between blushing and sad, I'm like, I picked the wrong one and I can see it. If I turn on voiceover, it'll tell me what it is. I think you should be able to do something to trigger that.
That's a good point. There's a Mac app I adore called Rocket, which lets you search emoji and stuff.
Who's Rocket?
But one of
Yeah.
the side effects is that when you open its full app, not its little helper typer, but its full app, it will tell you the name of every emoji. And so if you're looking at the two blushy ones going, which one means blushing and which one means sad, just click on them and it'll tell you what they're called. And that helps me use the right emoji.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm pretty sure Rocket disappeared from my, like in one of my Nuke and Paves, and it's not on this Mac, but it is in 15 seconds. It will be.
Excellent. And it's gone to
And
donationware, so it's even easier to install these days. You used to get a free version with less features, and he just went, it's too much effort to maintain. If you want to throw me some money, throw me some money. Otherwise, just install the app. So I threw him money straight away and then install the app.
it's going to be, we mentioned Rocket from MatthewPalmer.net.
There you go. Do you want that as your palate cleanser, Alison?
There you go. Well, I added it as a sub bullet.
Cool.
It's now in the show notes.
Excellent.
Well, this was fun, especially for security bits. Mostly
That's a really
upbeat.
good point. Yeah, 90% good news. Okay, it's summer, clearly. Yay.
There you go. The silly season.
Indeed.
All right, Bart, we will actually see you in 2 weeks.
A day early. 2 days early. Well, there you go.
Yeah, is that only
So
in 2 weeks? Yeah, that's
it is
fun.
in 2
Right
weeks.
before my vacation. Cool.
Yes, but even though it's only for 12 days, a dozen days, remember, folks, stay patched so you stay secure.
Well, that is going to wind us up for this week. Did you know you can email me at allison@podfeet.com anytime you like? If you have a question or a suggestion, just send it on over. I had so much fun. After my presentation, I was supposed to talk about how people can find my stuff, and I yelled out to the audience, everything good starts with, and a third of the people said, podfeet.com. I loved it. It was really fun. Anyway, you can follow me on Mastodon, podfeet.com/Mastodon. Want to listen to the podcast on YouTube? Go to podfeet.com/YouTube. If you want to join the conversation, you can join our Slack community where? podfeet.com/Slack. You can talk to me and all of the other lovely NoCilla castaways. You can support the show at podfeet.com/Patreon or with a one-time donation at podfeet.com/donate, like Mr. X did this week, or through podfeet.com/PayPal. And if you want to join in the fun of the live show, we had lots of fun this week. Head on over to podfeet.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time and join the friendly and enthusiastic NoCilla castaways. Thanks for listening and stay subscribed.